This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Sarvanamutu. Today is Friday, the 24th of October. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Cianello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Hi, Neil.
Hello, Joanne and Neil.
Hey,
And John. Hi, Neil. And John, both of you.
Can you guys believe that last week I was musing about the fact that we would have nothing to talk about today?
Yeah, I feel like this is like the week we've been waiting for. So yes, we have a few things to say.
We do.
Just one big topic.
Well, it's gonna.
Eh?
Yeah,
What's
that's
the
right.
topic? No, I'm just kidding.
This is all Lansdowne all day, so that's what we're going to jump into. Listen, before we get into the discussion, I just want to reiterate an announcement that you made last week, Joanne, which is that there is going to be a Lansdowne 2.0 People's Forum happening on Monday, the 3rd of November at 6:30 p.m. It's taking place in Barrhaven at the Salvation Army Church and Community Center. There's details at betterottawa.ca. Now, what's unique about this is there's going to be some speakers. Maybe, Joanne, you could mention one or two of those. But it's an opportunity for people to actually pose questions. So it's going to be that kind of classic town hall format, I think. And I know that a lot of people have had questions about Lansdowne, haven't really felt they've had the venue to express them. And so this is what that event will provide. So, Joanne, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I want to say that, of course, you'll be there. Councillor Sean Menard from Capital Ward, where Lansdowne is located, will be there. Ian Lee, superfan from the Ottawa Charge, will be there. So, and a few other people. I'm sorry, I'm not giving all their names right now. And I'll be moderating. And I want to just say I had one concern about it, and that is I think there's a lot of people skeptical about Lansdowne that are coming to this event, well informed. They'll have read the report, and I'll be there, trying hard not to take sides. But also there to keep decorum. I just want to tell everyone in advance: don't come in and talk about corruption or developers running City Hall. I'll be shutting that down, everyone. We're going to have a great discussion, but it's going to be very respectful. And I'm also going to push back a bit. Now, we have invited someone from OSEG, someone from the mayor's office. By we, I mean you, Neil. But we haven't heard back from them. So I'm a little concerned that in my pushback, I'm going to look like I'm actually advocating for Lansdowne. But it is going to say we're going to try to be as fair as possible, ask the questions, and have a really good discussion. I think it'll be great. By then, of course, we'll have had 2 to 3 days of a committee meeting. But it'll be in advance of the Auditor General's report and the council final decision. So great. A lot of Lansdowne.
Lansdowne. And that event will be taking place in person, but there also will be an online version, like a hybrid. It'll be a hybrid event. We would encourage as many people as possible to attend in person, just because it's a lot easier to ask the question. It's much of a better environment. And I know a lot of people, the response has been quite strong already. It's only been out for we've only had the event published for a day or two, and the numbers are quite high already for registrations. Let's start our discussion on Lansdowne. And John, I want to start with you. Vibe check. So tell us, when we talked about this a few months ago out in the great lawn of Lansdowne, we were drinking our drinks out on the back, and you took us back to Lansdowne 1.0, which was back then, a decade ago. This was all really about, do we want to bring football back to Ottawa? So tell me, is that what the vibe for Lansdowne 2.0 is all about, or is it something else?
Yeah, no, I didn't have beer goggles at the time when we were sipping our suds on the lawn there, Neil. I do still believe it's a bit of a vibe issue for the city of Ottawa. It's about doing something big. I guess we've done something big already with Lansdowne 1.0, but this is something about doing something even bigger. I'm sure in the minds of many people around the council table and many city staffers too. And this is for, I think, a chance for the city of Ottawa to take another big swing, not to mix their metaphors with football and baseball here. But I do truly believe we can talk about all the millions of dollars the city wants to spend and all the big risks the city is taking in terms of how to pay off all those all that money up front. But I do really believe at the end of the day, this is about something that's more qualitative than quantitative. For many on council, and it's the vibe of having this big entertainment facility in the middle of the city, or in the middle of the central area anyway.
Okay, well, Joanne, what would you say? What is Lansdowne 2.0 really all about?
I think it depends on what you're looking at, right? I mean, there's two different vibes going. There's John's vibe, 100%, right? And then there's, I hate to say this because the boondoggle vibe, right? And I don't mean that it is a boondoggle. I don't actually think that, but the idea that, okay, we're just putting money into things. We're building this big project. It didn't work out. And now we're throwing good money after bad. And there's this giant report out that is super complicated and it's hard for people to understand. And the mayor says it's not even up to us to understand it. So, there's a big skepticism vibe, like, oh, here we go again, right? We're just giving money to sports. That is unfortunate because I don't think it's quite that, but that is the city's own fault that that's the vibe. So I think we have two competing vibes here that are happening, and I think both of them are going to be louder over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, listen, I got to say, I think this is about finances and priorities, and we're talking about a lot of money, as we will go into much more detail in the as we get into this discussion. And it's really about what are our priorities as a city? Is it about renovating a sports stadium that, in my opinion, is in like decent enough shape, or do we have higher uses for our tax dollars? So that's really
not a vibe. Come on, I mean that's an excellent analysis, but like I don't know what the vibe.
Okay, fair enough. So
vibe is financial.
Well, okay. Then Joanne, here's the vibe. Then this is gonna contradict the statement that you just made a minute ago. It's who is controlling and setting priorities at City Hall, right? And actually, this brings me back to the decision that we had at council or committee a few weeks ago about Taywin. And I went to Taywin committee and said, the only reason we're talking about this is because there is a major developer, in this case Taggart, that wants this project to go ahead. And I firmly believe, and I said it out loud, that if it wasn't for Taggart pushing this project very, very, very assertively, we would not be having this discussion. And quite frankly, I feel the same way about Lansdowne 2.0. I feel that there's some vested interests in the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group that want this to happen, and they are pushing very hard to make it happen. And I actually believe that if we looked at this project on strictly a cost-benefit analysis, most people, including councillors, would say, I'm not so sure. So,
right, fair,
anyway,
fair viewpoint. Right. Awesome. Not very vibey, but very fair. Okay, let's go.
Okay, I got to work on that vibe. Let's turn to the beginning of the week. So Monday morning, 11 a.m., the mayor held a press conference, which was a little bit unusual in the sense that the report itself didn't come out for a number of hours later. And the mayor was quite explicit about he wanted to set the tone, put out a narrative to the city. And it was a narrative in contrast to some of the voices that had been hearing from the community that were.
He means you, Neil.
He means me. Well, and I believe the exact quote was twisting the facts. Now, Joanne, I hope it's not only me, but he certainly was. If anyone that's seen my videos on Lansdowne, you can see them at YouTube on the Better Ottawa channel. They certainly have gotten under the mayor's skin. And for whatever reason, he's chosen to lash out at them. But before we get into that, can we just talk a little bit about process here? And you guys have been around City Hall for a long time. Have you seen this before where a mayor has actually held a press release to unveil a proposal even before, like the documentation was out?
Do you remember, John? I was trying to think back through all the Watson years, like LRT announcement things. I don't remember a pre-announcement like that.
Joanne, I can't remember specifically whether the cart before the horse kind of thing, whether the report came out before the cell, but I remember LRT2, right? Stage 2, when that was announced, it was a big deal. I can't remember if there was a report that came out before the mayor held a press conference about where they were going to extend LRT. Same with Lansdowne 1. I can't remember which came first, but I mean, it was pretty striking.
I remember that Lansdowne 2. I remember the LRT2 one because weren't we at we were at a press conference on Friday afternoon, and the mayor's like, "Yay, we're going to do it," and then leaves, and then we get the report and like, "Oh, it's $1 billion over what we said," and he was gone. So it was actually immediate, right? So I think that, whereas this was like 5 hours later, I think the report came out.
Yeah, and it's not ideal. Actually, I was reading citizen columnist Bruce Deitchman's column about the mayor availability, and he talked about how reporters were waiting for hours and hours until the report dropped. And I got post-traumatic stress for a second, because I remember back to Lansdowne 1.0 and the same thing
What did I
happening.
say? 7 p.m. Refresh.
Yeah, and it happened at
report.
night. I remember the report dropped. But I don't know what goes on behind the scenes there at City Hall as to why they delayed.
It's all spin, right? Like it's not about accountability. It's not about explaining it to people. Like I've been out of report. Like I've been out of journalism officially for a little over 2 years, but I'm never going to not have the soul of a reporter. I assume you aren't either, John. Right? Like the idea that the mayor says he's having this press conference so that reporters can meet their deadlines, I found so insulting. So insulting. You know what reporters want? They want facts. They don't want you to come out, throw a bunch of numbers at them. They're like, what are those numbers that they can't follow? And then, of course, they're asking questions. How can they ask real questions? They haven't read anything. They can only ask questions on the facts that you chose to give them. So I was driving home from Toronto with my husband, and I was listening to it, over Bluetooth, because that's the exciting life we have. Shout out to him. I was so mad. I was livid, right? Because that is not helpful. Not helpful. Does he think it looks good? I guess maybe he thinks it does, right? Because the first headlines are, oh, the price comes in at what we said it was going to be. It's going to be it's going to cost 1/3 of, we're going to get a $420 million facility for 1/3 of the cost. Those numbers are out there before anybody can look into the details. And, people have lives. They're not like us spending hours and hours reading a 130-page report, right? And so that is spin. So he's allowed to do that. There's no rules to say you can't do that, but you get to call it for what it is.
And it worked, yeah. Joanne. The first headlines were exactly that. Mayor says that cost at Lansdowne came in under what they planned previously. And he got those headlines. But it's spin at the top. But there's so many days. I think it's the job of the public and, quite frankly, reporters, to dig into the details. And we've seen reporting since the mayor's press conference by CBC. And I saw the Citizen story today, too, as well, that actually dug into the numbers. And the truth will come out as to what's underpinning all the financial analysis.
Yeah, but will it come out in time for those decisions? Because it's hard, right? People are going through them. Anyway, as you said, I also don't think it really helped his cause. I mean, it helps those headlines. But I've heard from a lot of people who aren't like municipal nerds like us say, and I don't know, Neil, if you want to talk about this, but just speaking of vibes, you're like, suddenly the mayor seemed a bit more Watsonian than he has in the past, right? And which I think is a little bit unfair to Jim Watson, because I'm not sure he's ever done quite that. But he's spent 3 years working on this brand of collaboration and like not having one-upmanship. And also it sounds like he kind of has the votes on council anyway. So why he had to go on this super aggressive push, I don't know, but I don't think he did himself any favors with it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why do you think he's gone after community members? Yeah. Like he didn't call me out, but I'm clearly one of his targets, and I think other people are too. Is there any advantage to this?
It surprised me, Neil, that he would go after opponents, because it reminded me it's a big baseball day. We're taping this first day of the World Series. Going to use a baseball reference. Hall of Famer Reggie Jackson.
I love baseball. You use a baseball reference.
Hall of Famer Reggie Jackson once said, "They don't boo nobodies. They don't boo nobodies," which means that you have to be a somebody if you're being called out. In his case, it was baseball. So the fact that Mayor Sutcliffe actually was booing people in his speech makes me think that he's a little concerned about people, maybe you, Neil, maybe others around council who are opponents to the project. And so I was surprised he would actually call out opponents, because usually the thing you would do is don't talk about people who oppose you. Yes. You talk about your messages, your key messages, about all the things you believe are positive about the thing you're into, not about the people who oppose you. So I'm shocked he was going to boo the somebodies. So
you're somebody, Neil. The mayor says that. I think also I have questioned. Mark Sutcliffe's a smart guy, and he knows comms. But I have questioned the political instincts on occasion. I just want to quickly remember in 2022, Horizon Ottawa put out a statement that, Mark Sutcliffe, when he was running for mayor, had a big party with rich people at OSEC. I think Jeff Hunt, who is no longer in OSEC, ran it. And I don't think reporters were really going to report that because it was all legal and no, nobody was sure what to say about it. Except then the mayor lost his, like, he flipped his lid over it, and then it became a story, and he brought so much attention to it. I'm like, why would you do that, right? I feel like there's also a few other votes at council. It's like everyone must agree. Like it's not good enough to win. We must all agree that it's good, and the people who are against it, not good. And again, that's just my own interpretation. I don't have anything, but it was a weird moment that I thought was not needed and negative.
And maybe it just, to your point, Joanne, it just illustrates that Mark Sutcliffe isn't a politician by nature, right? He actually was a journalist businessman. And so whereas when you compare him with former Mayor Jim Watson, who's been a politician for many, many years and knows maybe how to spin a little bit better, and maybe this is just showing that Mayor Sutcliffe is still learning politics.
I'm sorry to interrupt, because in the past when we used to have a municipal panel, I got always in trouble from listeners for interrupting John. But and fair enough. But I agree, he didn't come out of politics, but what I've seen is a lot of political stuff. Like you can't say he doesn't use political strategy, just maybe not that well, which is kind of the worst of all the worlds, right? There's good politics, not good politics. So you should choose.
Well, listen, I got to say that if I'm delighted that he chose to take this path. It's just given me more ammunition and more content for my next video. So another video coming out very soon.
Well, that's exactly it. He provided content to his opponents. So there you go.
Yeah.
If you're an opponent, Neil, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you.
Well, we're going to find out very soon what I think about Lansdowne. So let's talk about something that happened at City Council. So Council met on Wednesday, and a motion came before them to delay the decision on the final Lansdowne vote. So you'll remember that Wilson Lowe back 2 years ago, I guess, had introduced a motion saying we need at least 30 days to analyze this. The council agreed to that. Finally, when the documentation arrived on Monday, it turned out it was only going to be about 10 days before the committee and maybe 20 days before council. And so a motion came forward to say, let's delay. And either of you, do you want to pick up and just let people know what happened with that motion?
Well, it's interesting because actually, it actually won a majority of the votes to say yes. Oh no, you know what? It wasn't actually the motion. It's so procedural. I'm sorry, people out there, but it is. If you walk a motion onto council, you have to have at least, I believe, 3/4, 2/3, 2/4. Yeah. Of people to say, okay, yeah, we'll discuss it. They couldn't get that. They got a majority, 12 of, I think there were 22 people there that day. So they got 12 people to say yes and 10 people said no, but that wasn't enough to actually discuss it. The original motion that Wilson Lowe put back in the day did not compel staff to bring this report 30 days forward. It was like, if possible, and staff said, well, we'll try. But of course it didn't work, right? You have to have a motion that actually has certainty in it if you think you want it to happen. So in retrospect, I think they should have said, we'd like it 15 working days before or something like that, and actually have people agree to that. So that motion was kind of, and kind of speaking of vibes, right? It wasn't really a real motion. But to Wilson Lowe's point, it is not only is it to get that they would like more time with the report before council, before committee next week, and before council meeting on November 7th. The auditor is coming out with a report on what she thinks, Natalie Goujon, about what she thinks of Lansdowne 2.0 procurement deal. And it's coming out, I think the meeting is Tuesday. The report might come out Monday. And then council has only till Friday to deal with it. Like, what if she comes out and says, I have a lot of issues with these. I have concerns, right? Like, it is a lot of information to digest. This is a big decision for councillors. This is like one of those things where councillors' jobs are crazy. It's like deal with a hedge that's causing problems in your ward and also decide on contracts worth hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars, right? This is the second largest deal in our city after the LRT. I think we all want them to have as much time as they need to talk about it, ask questions, really understand it before they say yes or no. And I had a lot of issues with some of the answers the mayor gave when asked about this. John, you can jump in anytime here. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well, Joanne, maybe I can just let John, like, I mean, do you think it was fair to request a delay, John?
That's fair. I do kind of agree. I think I heard Mayor Sutcliffe talk about people who are opposed things are always asking for delays because it's their only way to really get a foot in on an argument or try to push things off to try to make people reconsider things. So I do agree a little bit about that. If you
Do
delay,
you agree when he said that it's not the public's job to dig into the
no,
reports?
but I to your point, like, when do you delay two? So we're getting into city budget season too, right? And so that's a big problem when you're having these two big Goliath issues collide at City Hall and things get really dramatic and things kind of people get tired. This is what happens,
I would like to.
I
Okay,
think.
this is the part where I interrupt with you all the time. But if you remember 2019,
Yes.
right before COVID, when we all went home, council decided LRT2, that was the huge thing where they refused to tell councillors whether SNC Lavalin had failed the technical score. Answer, yes, they had. But that was also the day they had the budget, right? So, like, things happen all the time. Also, I don't think it's the fault of citizens who want people to make a good decision that the mayor's office or council or whoever, or staff, however it worked out, cannot manage their time. I do not think that moving the council decision by 3 weeks is going to make any giant material difference. It would maybe maybe a little bit delay the start of the construction, which they think is going to start early next year. But we've been talking about this since 2019. It's going to kill us to wait a couple more weeks to make sure we've all done our due diligence and that we have some confidence that people are making informed decisions instead of just voting on vibes. This is going to be the vibe show. Lansdowne too.
Yeah.
Well, they've been
Lansdowne
talking about it for that long
2.0.
then I mean, you could say the opposite too, right? About why delay another 3 weeks. And I've already seen counselors go onto their social media, some who are opposed, and say, I've read all the reports and now this is my decision. So they actually, some of them have said they've read all the reports, done their own analyses, and came and vocally put out their position on the report. So that's to say, like, some counselors have already done the work.
Right. But John, what's going to happen is, the documentation's come out. People are going to start opening it up and looking through it and finding all sorts of things that haven't been talked about yet. And that will be new information that counselors and others will have to take into account, right? And it's not until there's this process of public discovery, right, where one person figures something out and someone else builds upon it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where we need the time, quite frankly, right? Because some of this stuff is going to take a few weeks to really come to the head.
Maybe, and I'm curious to see like the delegations next week. And if I'm trying kind of changing gears here a bit, but I'm curious to see about the amount of opposition that's going to be voiced during the delegations compared to what it was in 1.0, and see if the voices are louder this time compared, because they're pretty loud in 1.0, right? We had a whole Friends of Lansdowne group that was created with a legal component and challenges and everything else. So I'm curious to see if something like that is going to come and brew again once we hear the deputations next week.
Yeah, we're in a different political and planning landscape where there are, like, for example, appealing it to the land tribunal is not allowed anymore. Yeah. So things like that. Yeah. Also, if I would just say, before we move on from the mayor's comments and into the substance of this report, I also took exception to his statement that this was all decided in November 2023, that council decided to move on with this process. We decided to move on to a procurement process. Yes, millions of dollars have been spent, getting this ready, and it makes it difficult for people. That's the whole sunk cost fallacy, right? That to move back from it.
2 weeks in a row you said that, Joanne.
No, 2 times. It's my favorite thing now. Get a T-shirt made.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly. But the decision's not made till the decision is made, right? This is the problem. We say, oh, let's look into this. We're not really going to make a decision yet. And then suddenly when there's a controversy over the decision, like, well, we made this decision 2 years ago. No, we did not. We did not. So I just want to be clear. Yes, there's a lot of work done on it. There's a lot of pressure to not turn back now. But nobody agreed. We agreed to go down the procurement process and to look at the contracts it is councillors' jobs to actually dig into them and think, okay, is this good for the city? And that sometimes is really hard to ascertain.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the issue of our assessment of the project, and particularly some of the financial aspects. And a really great starting point for everybody, and certainly was for I think all of us, was Kate Porter, the CBC reporter, was on Ottawa Morning earlier this week and did a fantastic, probably about 10-minute
Yeah.
explanation of the finances. So we are going to link to that in the show notes. Highly, highly recommend that anyone that wants to understand what's going on, listen to Kate's explanation, because it is really first class. But
and by the way, when we talk about these, like, I know Kate very well. Obviously, I worked with her. I know she was up like most of the nights for the 2 nights before that, because that is the only way to figure this stuff out. So again, accountability, transparency, where is that? So thank you to Kate.
Okay, so I want to frame this by asking your thoughts on the mayor's comment that this is a terrific deal for taxpayers. Do you think that's a fair assessment of this deal?
I don't know.
John,
I don't know. I don't know if it's a deal, but there's a whole lot of risk. I mean, there's like, if you're thinking about, if someone, some of our listeners and viewers are thinking about where to put their investments these days, high risk, low risk, medium risk, I don't know, where do you do with your money? This would be high risk. Some of the revenue that's projected to help pay off the cost with Lansdowne, ticket sales, the waterfall distribution is probably the biggest one. Property taxes, of course, uplift, like all this stuff. There is high risk in the financials. And so that's why I think a lot of councillors are siding with the vibes rather than tuning out the risk on this project. Not saying that's going to create great stuff. I think Northside Stands, cool. New arena, very cool. The towers, I don't know. Are they too tall? Is that too much intensity for that site? Perhaps. But I think about the financial risk over the long term, about where the revenue is going to come from to pay off the cost for the city. And there's, I look at the risk. When I look at the report, I see a lot of interesting things, but a lot of risk too.
All right. So I want to talk about what the mayor didn't tell us. So as you've been opening up that document and working your way through it, what are some of the elements that you found that you thought, that's interesting? That's something that residents probably want to know about? Who wants to start us off here?
Well, I'll start. The one thing that I found really interesting is the municipal accommodations tax revenue being used for this. So high level, they're going to...
Okay, Joanne, let's let John talk.
Well, I was going to say, like, I'm kind of like, wow, like we're just cluing into we could use this revenue now. Like, remember, we've talked on the pod before how difficult it is for municipalities to raise money, right? Taxes are the biggest thing, user fees to offset costs of providing service. The municipal accommodations tax paid by essentially people who use hotel rooms in the city. And so the city is proposing to dip into that source of revenue to help pay for stuff at Lansdowne. And it made me start to wonder, like, oh my gosh, like what else could we use this for? Byward Market, for example, like a massive tourist attraction, Spark Street. Like, think about all the touristy things the city has fingers in the city. Lansdowne is one of them. But all the other things that I thought, wow, here's this pot of revenue that's coming in, not paid by city taxpayers, really, by visitors who are going to pay, visitors to the city, and here's a source of revenue that perhaps could help in the future as well in other areas.
What I wanted to interrupt with is not only are we using it, we are increasing it by 1 percentage point. It's going from 5% to 6%. That's 20% increase. Who negotiated that? Under what authority? And by the way, I've heard from a couple hotel owners who are like, this is news to me. Like, we're the ones charging it. We have no idea it was happening. They're not really thrilled because, cost of hotels have gone up in the last year. And now there's this extra cost they're passing on. Interesting. Yeah. So I think that'll be interesting.
What's the weird thing about it too was that the way it was presented, it was that we are going to build a hotel at Lansdowne, or we are moving towards building a hotel. Like, I didn't actually commit to it. And that there would be revenue from this hotel that would help offset the cost of Lansdowne. And then it turns out when you dig through the documentation that what they're actually saying is that, no, we're just going to impose an additional tax on all hotels across the entire city. and use it for Lansdowne. So I was a little disappointed the way it was presented there. That was not quite right.
Yeah, I think people were surprised by that. That was kind of came out of the blue.
And Ottawa Tourism
Yeah.
would have had to have been on board for this decision too, right, guys? So I mean, they
Yeah.
got buy-in from the lobby group anyway. I don't know about individual hotels.
Yeah, what about the members?
Right?
of that group,
It's
though,
always a
right?
thing. Who speaks for the members? Is the community association who speaks for the residents, or the community association? You know what? We see this in various ways. But that buy-in is really interesting. And I go back to my original comments about what else is Ottawa Tourism interested in doing for the city's tourism.
Yeah.
And I go back to these big tourist areas. That's not just Lansdowne Park.
Yeah, and it goes to a bigger theme, I think, that we're going to talk about is like, how come we can do these things for Lansdowne, but we never can do them for other projects that people want, right? Can I choose one now, and then you can choose one, Neil? Mine is why do we keep calling it a fixed cost contract when the city is responsible for the cost overruns? Like, that's like, I don't know how that works. Maybe someone can explain it technically to me, but the way normal people perceive the term fixed cost contract is we pay this and that's it. But how can that be if we're also responsible for the cost overruns? I would love to see the wording for that. And this is, I should say, only for the arena and the stadium. The retail podium and residential towers are separate. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. But I looked, and in 2023, the city said in a census report, 2024, that when the RFP was tendered, so this is like the bid, hey, here's what we'd like you to build, construction folks, give us your bids for the arena and the stands. They were going to make that RFP language public. I have that. I've actually asked the city about it. I don't know what the answers are. It's not public. You know, they put it on Merck's, which is the website that people go to get their contracts, but that's not public. I happen to know that. I go on it all the time. You have to register as a bidder
Pay
to get
for
those
it.
documents. So where are those documents, right? So that you can see if you're a counselor or a person like me who is really interested in procurement, a la LRT2, what exactly the conditions are that you've asked the bidders to follow. I would like to know that before voting on it. Remember in LRT2, people voted for a bid that failed the technical score twice, and they didn't know because they couldn't see the RFP. So I really hope they don't do that this time.
Let me tell you the thing one of the things that really caught my attention. That's around air rights, and which, by the way, really we should be calling them property rights because we are selling the land and hoping to buy it back later. I mean, we can. That's a whole separate issue as to whether that actually works or not. That you can buy it back later. But this idea of air rights, looking through the text, I don't think it's what people really think it is, and you're going to be hearing more about this over the next week or two. But essentially, what's happening is there's a company, Mirabella, out of Toronto, that have won the bid to purchase the air rights. Now, they have to put down, by the time this gets through council and is approved, they have to put down essentially what's like a $1 million deposit. Then in 2028, they would have to make their second payment, which would be about another $5 million. Okay. And then the rest of it comes a couple of years after that. So the way to think about it is that we think of it as this is their commitment to build towers. It's actually more of an option to build that they have purchased. So they have spent $1 million and they are purchasing an option to build. Now, because one of the head scratchers was why on earth is someone bidding much more than we had heard before? Originally the air rights were 39 million and now they're suddenly 65 million. Why is someone bidding so much more to build condominium towers when the condominium market is in such a dump? What appears to be the explanation is that rather than pay 65 million, what they've done is they've taken a bet. Like developers do land speculation. That's just rational behavior. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the business model. And so they said, look, there's potential that we could have a lucrative project here in Ottawa at Lansdowne Park. But we don't really know. Like, we don't know what the market is going to look like in 2028 or in 2030 when we start building. So let's take a bit of a gamble here. Let's put $1 million down on securing these rights. If it works out great, we'll go ahead and build. But if the market's in the tanks, you know what? Maybe we'll just walk away from this. So but they have to make They have to make the next payment by 2030, and then
Okay.
I think they're supposed to have it all built by 2035.
Yeah,
So we may end up in this world where we think that we're getting revenue from air rights. We think that there's going to be housing built on site, but the developer will come back and say, you know what, we've changed our mind, and yeah, $1 million. Hate to lose it, but we're just going to have to walk.
yeah. And Mirabella will be getting some money out of that because they are building the retail podium, kind of, John, you say you go to the Good Life there, right? Like kind of where where it is now. That's being rebuilt with the 140 parking spots that the city is putting in and paying for as well. Mirabella is actually building that for us. So even if they don't go ahead with the towers, I assume they get some money for that. I don't know how it works, but so maybe they'll break even on their, $5.7 million of air rights they have to pay. Who knows, right? But it's a giant question. Giant question.
Yeah. Can I bring up one more question that I don't really see a lot of talk about right now? And we go back to football. And this project, especially the stands, are being built especially for football, right? That's the main tenet of the field. And there's been this year, there's been reporting about the CFL and how it's doing financially. I think of the 9 teams, only 2 broke a profit this year. And so if I'm a counselor, I'd be asking city manager, especially if she's confident, if her team is confident that CFL has a solid future in the city of Ottawa. It's had a rocky past, right? At Lansdowne Park. And so I want to know how confident the city is about having CFL stay operating. Now it has a long history in Canada as a football league, but I'm kind of curious to know if they have done any risk assessment on whether the CFL will be around for many years if we're going to put this kind of investment in building new stands. Not to say that the TD Place is only used for football, because we see soccer, rugby, et cetera, et cetera. But look, the main thing has been football. So I want to know I want to see a little bit of commentary on the league and people's confidence in the football team sticking around.
Yeah, and I have to say too, I looked kind of at the timing of everything, which is like so optimistic, right? Hugely like big optimism bias on how quickly everything's going to get done. And I'm not assigning any ill intent to anyone or any of the parties, but OSEG is only required to keep the team going here, the Red Blacks, and I'm not sure about the 67s, but till 2032, right? But if you look at the construction site, by the time that comes around, we'll have already built the north stands and the arena. So It doesn't give the city a lot of leverage if, the owners come back and say, to your point, we need more help. We need a better deal. This isn't going to work. We're going to have to take the team out. We can't keep going because, they are losing a lot of money. Like they had like $12 million negative cash flow. So I feel like that's not I don't see they kind of have us over a barrel afterwards, right? Because we've just spent $400 million and change on building new arena and stadium, and then you're like, thanks for this, but we need a new deal.
Well, this is one of the really crazy things about the proposal. If we just talk about football, and to your point, Joanne, that the team is only on contract until 2032, and to your point, John, that the stability of the league is in question. It's really important to remember that with that outdoor stadium, and that outdoor stadium, we're going to tear it down and rebuild it. That stadium part alone is going to cost us over $100 million. Okay, not even counting the arena part. That stadium, those north stands, they get used 12 times a year. Okay, it's really important that people understand that
are they not used for soccer as well?
They're not.
I don't know.
They're not. Yeah. When soccer teams are there, like the Atletico or the new women's team, I think of the Rapid, the fans only sit in the south stands. What we've got is we are rebuilding these stands for a team that plays about 10 home games, and then we have a couple of international matches, like we had rugby this year, a couple of international rugby games that came through. And so the fact that we are spending all this money on a stadium we use a dozen times a year and 10 of those games are there's an uncertain future around them, really blows me away. And I just have to add that I went to the Red Blacks game last weekend, and I sat in the south stands. And then
you came in like, oh no!
I kept my head down, but I sat in the south stands, and then at halftime I went over to the north stands. There was no shortage of seats available, so I went and sat there under the roof. And I got to say that OSEG always talk about the improved fan experience. Well, there was no difference in fan experience, let me tell you. It was exactly the same on either side for me, and certainly good enough for what it needs to do for 12 days a year.
Well, I mean, I like the south side. Oh, we're gonna go north side, south side here. Is that it? Okay. No,
No, no, no.
I gotta say, I do like the new south side. It's got the concourse. You can walk around. You can stop and turn around and look at the action. Whereas the north side, you have to go into the concourse behind the stands. So from someone who's gone there a few times, I do like the south side. But as I was thinking about the stadium this week, guys, I was thinking, well, geez, should the city have actually done something a little bit bigger with the stadium? Thinking like with a track, so you can do track and field stuff. Like, Terry Fox facility is great at Mooney's Bay, but what if you could attract bigger events and maybe actually do something that's a little bit more flexible with what you can do in the stadium? To your point, Neil, if there's only so many events that you can use both sides of the stadium for, maybe you need to start thinking about how do we attract even different types of events to this venue if we're going to invest the money. So maybe the city should have gone even bigger with the dream.
Well, as I've always said, we are the capital of half-assedness, right? Like we just, we want to do something, but we're too afraid to spend the money to make it really good. So we make it only half good, and then it's no good for anyone, which is how we started here. We are here from this day was predestined in 2012. I don't believe the OSEG partners, by the way, we should say there are only two OSEG partners now. Like it's Roger Greenberg and John Ruddy. There used to be more. They are gone. So they knew very well that they would want these arena and the stands not done. The 2012 council was not up for that. They gave us this baloney idea that this was revenue neutral. And so literally 5 years after it opened, they've come to say, oh, we need to redo it again. So this is what happens when people don't have the political will to say, okay, even if something's unpopular, but you think it's good, to say, no, this is what we need and this is what we have to spend. So it's very weird now. So I did not know that about the North Stands, that they're not used for soccer. I find that disturbing.
Well, you know what, and it is, and John, you make a great point that it would have been an ideal opportunity to expand this to more sports and to make it a more diverse facility. That unfortunately that train has left the station, right? We just we're not doing that. There's one last feature that I noticed in the staff report that I think would really irritate a lot of people, and that's that the proposal includes putting in a above ground parking garage, sort of, exactly. 180 cars in between the north stands, the new north stands, and the retail component. So if you think sort of between Good Life and the stands.
Is that basically where the arena is now?
Yes, but above ground. Above. Is the arena above ground? Or half and half, maybe? Yeah. So I think that would probably, certainly if you look at the Civic Hospital, the new campus that's being built at Dallas Lake, people are saying that, this new parking garage is kind of like everything they predicted and worse, right? So hopefully it's not going to end up like that, but it's
maybe you'll be able to see it as much. But also they
hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Podium. So how big is this? Is it making the podium larger? I'd like to know that, because there are sightline protections for Aberdeen Pavilion, and I couldn't tell from the report myself. So.
The one thing I do know, Joanne, is that the stands would be steeper. So the stands would not stretch out quite as wide. So maybe they have a little bit more room for a parking garage, but I have a feeling that where the Good Life is now might get pushed out a little bit too. Not entirely sure, but these are the details that people care about, right? And deserve to know.
Well, the car question is really good too. There's going to be hundreds of people more living on this site. Many are going to want cars to park somewhere. If it's not going to be at Lansdowne, it's going to be somewhere else in the community somewhere. And so
one of the things they're doing is they're taking over all of the 140 spots that the city is building.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're building it if it's going to go to this residential tower, but they need all of those spots there. So,
well, I don't think we have time to talk about it now, but the transit component, transportation component of the site is always something that's very live with Lansdowne. So in the future, with this more people living there, potentially more events happening there, it's going to be a live discussion for the next decades going forward.
Yeah. Also waterfall questions, right? Like a lot of the financing for the city to make it work the way they would like it to work, their best case scenario. First of all of the money that comes from the retail commercial component comes at the end, right? Like the last 20 years or 40 years, and who knows what's going to happen. And it also seems to assume an average of twice as much than they're making now, right? So I don't know if that's reasonable or not. I just throw it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. You're talking about for the retail profits,
So the
right?
retail part, the
Yeah,
so-called waterfall part,
yeah,
which is
that's
better
right.
than it was, but still, it's
Okay.
yeah.
Well, listen, I have a feeling that we're going to be talking about this again next week.
You think?
Something tells me. But there are some major milestones coming up. And let's just so that everyone's aware, this goes to committee, the Finance Committee on Wednesday, October the 29th. The public, of course, is welcome to make delegations there. I will be making a delegation. Anyone else thinking about making a
I
delegation?
also, for the first time in my life, signed up to make a delegation, but a
Is that your
governing
first delegation?
It is, yeah. Well,
Oh, wow.
I'm a public, a private person now, so yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, how about you?
I'm not going to be delegating. I'll be watching, and we'll be talking about it. I'm sure your experience as a delegate, both of you guys, when we meet again at our next pod. So I'm curious to hear from you guys how that experience was and what kind of vibe you got from counselors in return.
Yeah, I don't know what day I'll be. They have actually the council and staff have put aside 2 additional days, right? It could go to as late as the 31st because staff will want to make a presentation. There'll be lots of and then there'll be delegates, and then there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of motions, and I think that'll take quite a long time. So,
Okay.
Not sure what day we're showing up.
Okay. Well, we will be talking about this for some time to come. There's one last thing I wanted to mention. Joanne, you referenced some of the analysis that I had done that, it's partly for us to get ready for this pod. Everyone, we're all moving so quickly that we shared our analysis. That analysis that I've done, which just tries to highlight what are all the key data points, take them out of the report. I'll make that available to the public. I think it's, it was useful for me. I think useful for you, and hopefully useful for others, just to be able to have all this information at their fingertips and not have to dig around these public
That is a great public service, Neil. It's really great. Yeah,
okay, and the link to that will be in the show notes of this pod. And I think that's it for this week. So I want to thank Joanne, John, for the discussion today. I'd like to thank all of our listeners. If you have any comments, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And we will be back in 7 days. Until then, this has been the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel.